We are living in times of constant restlessness, and just like our bodies need comfort, our souls also long for a sense of peace. The question is, how do we achieve it? Join us today in our discussion about prayer and meditation.
लाएंगे सदाकतें इस्लाम कुछ भी हो, जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें, जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Beacon of Truth, a live program from MTA International Studio, Canada. In this program, we discuss a variety of contemporary issues which are relevant to today's young Muslims. To help analyze the subjects, we get the views and the expertise of some of our guests as well as the general public. You too can get in touch with us with your comments and questions. You can send us your questions via Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag BeaconMTA. Today we're also conducting an online poll about the subject. We asked you on social media that do you feel the need to pray or to meditate? Inshallah, we'll be sharing the results later on in the program. Today I am joined by my two colleagues, Asif Mujahid Sahib and Shahrukh Rizwan Abid Sahib, both of whom are serving as the Imams of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here in Canada. Today we're discussing prayer and meditation. After a long, hard day at work, our bodies, they crave rest so that we can be rejuvenated and we can continue on in life. And as Muslims, we believe that just as we have physical bodies, there also exists a spiritual element to our existence. Our physical body demands physical nutrition. Similarly, we also need a spiritual sustenance to thrive. All of the religions of the world prescribe some form of that spiritual sustenance which feeds the soul. Whether you call that meditation or prayer or simply reflection, all of these things are taught by religions. They may have different forms, but they are all trying to fulfill the same purpose, which is to nourish the spiritual side of man. Today we'll be discussing the concept and the purpose of prayer and meditation. We'll be taking a look at the benefits of both of these, or the detriments, if any, and how can we increase in our spirituality in order to attain a lasting inner peace, which is the objective of our creation. But before we begin our discussion, let's take a look at what some people in the public told us about what inspires them to pray and or meditate.
Yes, I meditate, and what motivates me to meditate is the calm feeling that I get from it.
I've just never been too involved in praying or meditating, so I haven't.
I pray for my religion and I meditate for my mental health.
What motivates me to pray and meditate is that I was brought up in a Christian environment. So being a young child, I grew up going to church, and I grew up seeing my grandmother and also my auntie praying. So that motivated me to start praying as well, to see what it's like to seek God for myself and see if He accepts my prayers. So that's what motivated me to pray.
Well, there have been times where it's like I would be open to either, particularly meditation, but I just never have come around to it or have chosen to meditate.
I pray. I usually pray at night. It's just to be kind of just to thank, for me, I put God for the day and kind of just show my appreciation for it.
I don't usually pray. The last time I prayed was a week ago though, but it was a year before that I didn't pray.
So we just heard the comments from some folks with different faiths, different backgrounds. And prayer is something which is found in almost all the different religions of the world. For our non-Muslim viewers, could you explain the concept of the Islamic prayer, or the purpose of the Islamic prayer and all the things that it entails?
So as you mentioned, that there are many religions in the world. And so it just goes to follow that there are many different forms of prayer that vary across the board because of these different religions. So within Islam, prayer is a very broad term. Now, the thing that I want to speak about right now is the most cardinal form of prayer, or the most important form of prayer which has been mandated, known as the salat, or also in Urdu, also known as the namaz. Now, the reason why this is the most cardinal form, the most important form, And the most important form is because it is actually a conglomeration of physical gestures and positions which are found in prayers from all different religions. And this isn't only the case when it comes to the physical part of the prayer as well. Rather, for the actual verbal part and the spiritual part as well. When we review what the Islamic prayer is, it's not only the sense of a prayer where you are asking your Creator or you're asking Allah Ta'ala for something. Rather, at the same time, you are glorifying Him. You are paying homage to Him. Along with this, you are reflecting over the attributes of God. You are getting to know who God is. You are getting to know who you are in this connection that you have with God. In this formula, almost, you are getting to know where you stand and where Allah Ta'ala stands in regards to this the spiritual connection that you are actually having. So, another actually very important aspect of prayer is that prayer is for the benefit of the worshiper. That's something that has to be established. Prayer is not something which is adding something to Allah's existence, or that is something that if we don't do it is taking away from His existence. We are the ones who benefit from the prayer. Another very important aspect is that we are in a physical realm. Allah Ta'ala has created a physical realm. And just like in this physical realm, we have physical bodies that require food, that require nutrition, that require provision and providence from our Lord. It's the similar concept with our spirituality as well, that we also have a spiritual part of ourselves, and that requires sustenance and provision as well. So this is done, or we basically feed our spirits by way of worship and prayer. Now, the question arises, what happens when we don't do this? When we're not doing this, then you could kind of say that it's a spiritual decay. It's a spiritual degradation, which then results in things such as the vast spread of atheism. The fact that we as a society are more and more depressed. There's more anxiety. People go through PTSD. So feeding the spirit, feeding the soul is also a necessity. And that's why we see, so for some people, they are erroneously turning solely towards meditation as opposed to prayer, making prayer their first and foremost form of actually receiving that contentment of heart. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of the concept of prayer.
So Shahrukh Saab, just adding on to this conversation, we talked a little about the purpose. So if you can shed some more light on the need for prayer, and I know Asif Saab talked about the spiritual aspect, but even the physical, there's even physical aspects and benefits from those as well.
The promised Messiah ﷺ actually writes that the truth is our God is recognized through our prayers. You know, each one of us, at times, we come across certain situations which are beyond our ability. And at that time, we need someone or something to swoop in and get us out of that undesired situation. And those who pray are helped, right? So because man is limited, you know, us as humans, we're very limited. Therefore, we need a higher power or a higher being. And the way to connect to that higher power or being is through prayer. And prayers, they serve as comfort for us. Sometimes they are a guidance for us. Talking about the physical benefits of the Islamic prayer, we see that the first thing that God has told us to do is to do ablution, purify ourselves, right? And so we wash our hands, rinse our mouth, clean our nose, and so on. And you know, all of these things are basically, we are preparing mentally and physically to go in front of God. But this also ties back to medical science. And that is because, you know, for example, washing our hands 5 times a day. You know, medical science proves that, you know, a lot of the germs that we contract is through our hands, because we touch, you know, door handles. When we're driving, we're using our hands as well. When we shake hands with someone, right? So we are contracting those germs. So in order to, you know, tackle this problem, medical science says, or doctors say, wash your hands multiple times a day. And Islam says, you know, wash your hands 3 times before praying, right? So 5 times a day, you know, you're supposed to wash your hands. Again, when you look at the postures and how we pray to God, you know, we stand, we bow down. Each posture actually is again tied back to science. And for example, like when we stand, you know, professionals have proven that standing actually, you know, helps in weight loss. At the same time, you know, it helps with these enzymes that can create diabetes. So to fight that, standing actually helps. Right? Then when we bow down, the blood in our body actually goes to our head. So all the postures actually, they tie back to these people that say that this helps our bodies as well.
So we have just talked about the physical benefits and the spiritual benefits. Jazakallah, gentlemen. I mentioned in the beginning of the program that Beacon of Truth is a live program, and you can send us your comments and questions via Instagram and Twitter using hashtag BeaconMTA. A lot of people are responding to some questions that we asked on Twitter about prayer and about meditation. They've shared their views and their thoughts, and we urge our viewers to head on over to at Beacon_MTA to benefit from them. I'll share just a few comments that have been coming in. This one comment comes from all the way from Africa in Ghana. This is Salifu Wininumbu Sahib. He says that prayer is a spiritual necessity that creates a bond of communication between him and his creator, Allah. A similar comment from Rifat Adnan Sahiba. She comments that prayer helps you establish a rapport and a relationship with God on a deeper level, becoming not only a witness to believe in the unseen, omnipotent, and omnipresent God, but also submitting to Him undoubtedly. Once there, it's not gravity keeping you situated, it's the love of God. Jazakallah for your comments. We will inshallah be going through the questions later on in the program. Now, in the modern era, people from every walk of life, they are drawn to this concept of meditation. In fact, we find celebrities, corporate leaders, and even politicians going on these retreats to reset and to reboot before returning to their regular routines of life. And this reflects on how common and popular this notion of meditation and getting away is in our society. The meditation movement is fast growing, and many people are even paying to take meditation classes. Some businesses even start the workday with a communal meditation of their employees. So we asked some professionals about meditation. Let's have a listen to what they had to say.
It's a very old practice, and it's evidence-based, and it really is about being fully present and being in this particular moment. So we focus our attention inward. We are fully awake and conscious, but we really concentrate on what is happening in the here and the now. So I'm not worried about the past, and I'm not thinking about the future.
Meditation is really this process of turning inwards for problems and for your solutions. So people look towards meditation to find some sort of relief from all the things that are happening outside. So they turn to meditation so that they can have a place where they're not able to, so they can close off all the things that are going on around them. So they have a moment of silence or a moment of peace. Really what they're looking for is peace.
Our lives are so fast-paced, and with all of the technology at our disposal and instant gratification, we're just on 24/7. I think people are looking for peace of mind. They're looking for a time where they can just relax and not be worried, and it really is about managing their stress.
Often it is related to the individual. Sometimes we do guided meditation sessions, so it's one person who is guiding a group of people into a meditation exercise. That meditation exercise begins with a ring of a bell, and people are told that they should plant their feet straight, they should put their hands on their knees, and then they should either close their eyes or leave their eyes open and just be aware of what is going on to them as they sit there. So that is the most basic level of meditation that we begin by.
Well, meditation isn't necessarily associated with any religion. And for me, I think the biggest difference is when I'm in prayer, I'm having a conversation with a higher power, my God. And that entails telling of what I'm experiencing. So I bring my past, my present, and my future, and I give it up to God. When we are meditating, we are focusing inward only focusing in on our bodies and our breath and really trying to calm the mind. There essentially is no conversation. And when we do have thoughts, because we all have thoughts, and it's unrealistic to think that we're never going to have thoughts, even in the practice of meditation, we just simply let them go by. And we don't have to react or respond to them. It's not a dialogue. Whereas in prayer, I am conversing with my Lord.
So meditation and prayer, or Islamic prayer in this example, you can evaluate your progress. So, there's 5 prayers in one day. You can see at the end of the day what your score is. So the system is built in. And that, I think, is a huge positive for prayer. But in terms of meditation, there can be risk that comes with it. And that risk is that, there's a risk of doing it alone. If this is something that you want to discover on your own, there's a great risk because you may not know what to do with yourself when you are in that state of meditation. When you feel like you aren't anything, but you are something at the same time. There's a lot of tension that I would say happens. There's a lot of push and pull. You're being pulled in one direction. Yes, you think that you're part of this world, but you're also supposed to think about the hereafter. So what is that tension? And that can get confusing for a lot of people. And I think if you have someone to guide you through this process, that is a lot more advantageous as compared to doing it alone. So there definitely is risk doing it.
So, gentlemen, the sheer popularity of meditation exercises, it begs this question that why are people doing it? What kind of benefits are they getting from it? Because it seems that everyone is involved some way or another in these meditation exercises, going on retreats and whatnot. So if you can kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, so, there actually are quite a bit of forms or different forms of meditation. Currently in the West, we see 2 that have gained a lot of notoriety and popularity, actually. The first being mindfulness meditation. Now, an actual interesting fact is that this is something that originally started picking up a little bit in the 90s and more so recently. And we actually have examples of people who practice mindfulness meditation, such as Michael Jordan, who actually started practicing it. And then that gained a little bit of popularity. And then you had some follow-up athletes who started following in those same footsteps, such as Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. So they actually practiced or learned a few of these mindfulness meditation techniques to help them out in their actual games. And besides mindfulness meditation, there's also something called Transcendental Meditation, where basically what you're doing in this specific form is you are just trying to find that level of peace and comfort, or just reach a stage of complete relaxation. And we actually see a lot of celebrities who take part in this as well. For example, we have Hugh Jackman, also known as Wolverine. He's actually quite a popular proponent of transcendental meditation. And besides that, we have examples such as Clint Eastwood or even Jim Carrey, who partake in these specific type of practices. What's interesting to note is the increase that we've seen in the past few years. So from 2012 up until now, there's actually been about a 7 to 8% increase in the people who are practicing meditation. And a lot of these are actually teenagers. So we see that the youth of our society, they're actually understanding that there's a need for some type of practice or some type of meditation and whatnot. So as for the benefits that you mentioned, there are quite a bit of positive benefits that have been proven. It helps a lot of people who don't have, it helps a lot of people actually in dealing with their PTSD, their depression, and their anxiety, and to induce feelings of contentment almost. But this again is also, it's limited in its scope. What's interesting, however, is that when people make this claim that meditation, it doesn't have a religion, or it doesn't sprout from religion. The origins of meditation are from religions. So Hinduism and Buddhism and even Jainism, these meditation is a very strong form of prayer for them. So what we have to understand is that the very origins of what these people. So nowadays, if you have people who are claiming to be atheists or claiming to be spiritual but not religious, they're partaking in these practices. But what we have to understand is that the origin of these practices are actually from ancient religions. Another thing is that what are they actually doing in this meditation? One thing across the board that you see with meditation is the concept of focus. Whether you're focusing on yourself, you're focusing on others, or you're focusing on your breathing, or you're focusing on your emotions. There's a concept of focus here. Now, what's interesting is the very first word of prayer.
The Islamic
prayer. The Islamic prayer, when you're stating your intentions, the very first word is wajjahtu, that I have put all my focus towards that being, meaning towards Allah Ta'ala. So what's happening over here is you're actually putting all your focus towards Allah Ta'ala, and that's a very interesting point.
Now, just adding on to that, Asif Saab explained meditation and its popularity and stuff, but kind of manipulating one's thoughts, this could have a lot of adverse and negative effects. Are there any negative effects to this?
So generally, the effects of meditation are good. So it helps us deal with depression, anxiety, stress. It also helps us with concentration. But that's it. Meditation is only a mental exercise. And with this said, there are some negative effects as well, unfortunately. And when we look into those, we see that, sometimes meditation can surface those emotions within us that are buried in us. And that could lead to depression and having suicidal thoughts. And classic Buddhists, they talk about this, and they say that, people who meditate can suffer from hallucinations and loss of identity. And when a person meditates and they go into this phase of depression, that's called the dark soul of the night.
The dark soul of the night.
Yeah. So, the dark night of the soul.
Okay.
Right. That's what's it called. And it's a very scary situation, and it's very hard to get a person, back.
What's interesting to add on to what Shahid Saab said is that what's interesting is that they've coined a term for it. So they've given it a label that it's called Zen sickness, or it's called the black night of the soul. And that's interesting because that shows that this isn't a one-off.
Right.
This is a common occurrence. And that's why it's kind of, when someone's first starts reading up on meditation or starts practicing it, these are things that they're warned of, that this is something that can happen. And this isn't something that happens to people who are just starting out. Some of the most famed practitioners of meditation face such severe forms of psychosis where in some cases, some extreme cases, they've lost their sense of identity. There have been people who have had the need to go to therapy for years on end because of a certain retreat that they went on, and they just weren't able to handle it mentally. And we see that, for example, they need certain antidepressant pills. They're in constant need of therapy. Some people have gone to the extent where they needed electrical shock therapies, electroconvulsive therapy. So overall, there are positive benefits, but at the same time, we have to know that if something does go wrong, it can go extremely wrong.
Very interesting. We have time for a few more comments that have been coming in on social media. We asked that, what do you prefer, prayer or meditation? And this comment comes in from Sabiha Ashraf Sahiba. She comments that prayer for sure. Meditation happens during prayer, but prayer doesn't happen during meditation. And we asked that, do you think prayer and meditation are the same thing? And this comment comes in from Ozair Ahmed Sahib. He says that they certainly overlap in some ways. Mindfulness, for example, is an awareness of your state of being when practiced in salat. Being aware of how your body is standing or prostrating before Allah can increase the quality of the prayer. Jazakallah once again for sending us your comments, and inshallah we will take the questions later on at the end of this program. Now, we've learned why the meditation movement is growing as rapidly as it is, and we've seen the benefits, of course, and the harms are associated with meditation. But when we look at the religion of Islam, we find that it too enjoins a method of prayer and meditation. And as we've discussed so far, this is something necessary for human beings, for the satisfaction and for the cravings of the soul, for the spiritual nourishment of the soul. Islam has actually given the most pristine form of that prayer that combines the physical actions as well as the verbal words of worship. It fulfills the spiritual needs of the soul to communicate and to establish that communion with our Creator. And when we say spirituality, what do we really mean, and how can we attain it, and what relationship does it have with the prayer? These are just some of the questions that we still need to discuss. But before getting into that, let's hear from some folks in the public about their understanding on the acceptance of prayers.
It was a couple of years back, and it was right before a 200-meter race. And I remember praying so much and asking God to put me in the first place and break my personal record, which was pretty much impossible at that time. But I did, and I did break that record, which is pretty crazy.
I pray for guidance. I pray that God will protect my family. So far, God has been protecting my family. So I would say that my prayers have been coming through so far.
Yeah, I have, and it just felt very relieving because it was for a very stressful situation.
Yes, in my personal life, if I've ever prayed for anything, it has been accepted.
For me, it gives me a sense of relief. It shows me that there is someone there for me, God. And it just gives me a good vibe, a good energy. Lets me know that I'm in control. I know what's happening around me, and I know that someone is up there listening to me.
So prayer is a way to increase in one's spirituality. This is something we can all agree with. But let's comment on how to actually attain this. How do we really attain a truly spiritual state?
Yes. So what we have to understand is that when understanding spirituality, we have to understand that it depends upon the existence of a creator. So nowadays, you actually have a lot of people who, or especially in the atheist movement, they say that they are spiritual but not religious. Now, this is kind of a contradictory statement, because your spirituality or the very concept of spirituality depends on your connection with Allah Ta'ala, your connection with your creator, and how close you can actually you can come to your creator. So the stronger your connection, the more you actually increase in your love with Allah Ta'ala, that means that you are increasing in your spirituality. So to say that you are spiritual but not religious, that seems as if it's kind of a contradictory statement, because you're not going outside to something greater than yourself, when it comes to meditation or being spiritual but not religious. So that's the first thing that we have to understand. The second thing is that when it comes to meditation, it can be considered a spiritual practice or a spiritual exercise. But that's dependent upon whether your belief is that a creator actually exists. If not, then you can say that meditation is a physical exercise, or you can say that it is a mental exercise or an emotional exercise, but you can't term it, or you can't deem it as a spiritual exercise as such. So that's the first thing. One of the main forms of increasing your spirituality and your connection with your Lord, with Allah Ta'ala, is, as we stated before, is the concept of prayer. The greatest prayer, which is the salat, the namaz, which is a conglomeration of all forms of prayer, whether physical and even in regards to the wording, and in a spiritual sense as well. Another interesting way to increase in one's spirituality is, let's look at it from this angle. The Holy Prophet ﷺ has said that if Allah Ta'ala loves a person, He puts that person in trials. The Holy Quran states that, do people believe that, or do people think that they can say that we have believed, or that we believe in Allah Ta'ala, and they will not be put into trials? The reason why trials exist is so that Allah Ta'ala can test you and show you where you stand, and then once you know where you stand, you can then increase in regards to your spirituality. So these trials, what they're meant to do is they're meant to just break you in a way. So, we can take the example of a cup, of a vessel. That imagine yourself as this pristine vessel, and all of a sudden you go through a trial which completely shatters who you are. It just completely breaks you down. So imagine that this vessel, this pristine vessel that you are, cracks and breaks from the bottom. Now, Hazrat Masih Maud, when he explains it, is that when a child is born, he puts his love in his mother. Or he looks for that loving connection with his mother. So you're putting that love into this cup. But this cup is broken. That love eventually at one point in time ceases to exist. Then you go towards your spouse, or you go towards your children, or you go towards your friends or hobbies, and you're constantly trying to fill this cup, but it keeps leaking, and your thirst isn't quenched. That is a pitfall that we see. But the reality of the matter is that the only thing that can thirst your quench is your creator. So think about it like this. You're a broken cup. These trials have broken you. So you fill it with the eternal. That one being who is eternal, which is Allah Ta'ala. So you fill it, and although it may be leaking, because He is eternal, you are constantly filled to the rim. And then you can reach that, you could reach even another stage where even if you were to take this cup and completely submerge it underwater, throw it into the ocean, the cup will always be full. You will be completely surrounded by the love of God. So this is why we need trials and tribulations as well.
So now, Shahrukh Saab, is that the only way for us to increase the spirituality, is to be in trials and tribulations, or are there probably other means as well?
Well, we have to obey the commands of God. You know, God himself has given us certain commands to follow. And the first thing is to worship God like he should be. You know, he has given us certain timings that, you know, pray to me in these times. Now, if I'm watching a TV show or playing a game or watching a basketball game, it's time for namaz. And if I, you know, don't offer my prayer because, you know, I say that I'll combine it afterwards or I'll pray afterwards, then how can I expect to, you know, increase in spirituality? Because I'm more focused on this TV show or this basketball game, right? And I'm not giving importance to God at all. So we have to give importance to God. We have to make God our focal point, our focus of our life. You know, and then at the same time, there are some social and moral values as well. For example, how we treat our spouse, our parents, our neighbors. I know, do I break the law? Do I lie? Right? When I meet someone, do I say Assalamu alaikum? Do I smile at someone? You know, all these small things that the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, has taught us to do. You know, when we do those things and inculcate those in our daily life, that's when we increase in our spirituality.
Jazakallah. We have a comment that has come in from Amtul Rafiq Saiba, a very thoughtful comment. She says that I personally do not think that prayer and meditation are alike. They are different concepts indeed. Prayer requires extreme humility and love of the Creator. Meditation requires chanting and a clear mind. Prayer brings one closer to God. Meditation brings closer to oneself. So it seems meditation is a means, but it doesn't have an end. And prayer, it has an end, which is that connection with God the Almighty. Now this brings up a question. We discussed a lot about the benefits of the Islamic prayer. But sometimes people turn away from it because they say, you know, we prayed, but our prayers they just weren't accepted. So how do we explain that?
When we read the Holy Quran, God says that call upon me and I will answer your prayers. But at the same time, God also says that, you know, listen to my command, listen to me. Right? So while we are praying for something, we should also try to reform ourselves and become better people. Right? If we do not do that and only pray to God when we need him, then there's no point. So it's very important, you know, to motivate ourselves and to increase ourselves in our spirituality. At the same time, the promised Messiah, ﷺ, he says that to ask is human and to accept is divine. Right? There are certain situations that we pray for, and because of our limited knowledge, we don't know if this thing is good for us or not. Right? So we're praying to God for it, and God does not give it to us because that thing is not good for us. You know, it's like a small baby that sees fire, and that baby wants to play with that fire, but the mother will never allow, you know, her child to go play because she knows that, you know, he or she will harm themselves. Therefore, you know, even God is all-knowing. So he knows what is good for us and when to accept our prayer, right? So these are some of the things that we have to understand. Also, patience is very important. The promised Messiah, he says that sometimes a person is very close to having their prayer accepted, but they give up, and then they turn towards atheism, right? So keep praying, keep asking God, because even if God does not give you what you ask for, those prayers are accepted somewhere, right? So just keep praying. That's our job.
Right, and for God to accept.
Yes.
Right. Now, earlier through social media, we asked that, do you feel the need to pray or to meditate? Many viewers, they have responded. We have the results of that poll, and it's very one-sided. 97% are saying that they do feel the need to pray and to meditate, and only 1% are saying no, and another 2% are saying that they have a somewhat need. So 97% are saying they have that need to want to pray and to meditate.
Yep. This is actually very interesting to see. You know, the Prophet Messiah ﷺ Ibrahim Ahmadiyya, when explaining the verses فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا and فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا, he writes that every single human being has this seed implanted within them, or this light within them, that yearns for something greater than themselves, that yearns for a connection with Allah Ta'ala. So to see that there are so many people who actually who had this need or this want to pray or to meditate or to connect to something greater than themselves, this actually proves the truthfulness of the Holy Quran as well. And the way Hazrat Masih Maud explained it, that we are all wanting to connect with something greater than ourselves.
Jazakallah, gentlemen. A lot of comments and questions have been coming in. We'll take some of these now. This one comment comes from Varda Faryal Saiba. She comments that praying not only helps me strengthen my bond with Allah, but pouring my concerns to Him relieves me of any anxiety and stress I may be feeling. Knowing that He is there to listen and take care of my worries helps me relax mentally and physically. And there's this question from Ahmed Khan Sahib. He asks that in our busy lives, in the busy lives that we have today, it has become increasingly difficult to find time to educate ourselves on increasing our spirituality. What would you suggest in this case?
You know, the easiest thing is we're blessed with Khilafat. And every week, Hazur, may Allah be his helper, he speaks to us and he guides us. And his sermons, you know, they are a complete package on what we need to do to increase our spirituality. So if we take 1 hour a week and just listen to that sermon or just watch MTA in general, we can increase ourselves in spirituality.
Jazakallah. And this comment in question comes from Sabiha Khullat Sahiba. She says that prayer is an intrinsic need. Just the way our body yearns for physical substance to survive, our souls yearn the essence of prayer to attain peace and contentment. Reiterating much of what we have just discussed in our program today. There's a question from Kanita Tahir Saiba. She asks that when praying in distress, people tend to have a better focus on prayer. But when there is no problem, it becomes difficult to pray with that same level of concentration and importance. How can one have that same level of focus when praying in times of ease?
You know, going back to what was stated before in regards to when you were going through troubles and hardships, you find that you can focus much better in prayer, or there's that yearning for prayer as well. Somebody asked the same question to Huzur Anwar Ayyadahullah Ta'ala bin Aziz, and this is why we need Khilafat, because it's so amazing how he beautifully and just so simply explained it. He didn't get into it like this long explanation. He just said, think about those times that you were in need. Think about those times that you were filled with sorrow, and allow that to kind of guide you in your prayers and bring those emotions back. And that's kind of the first step in regards to focusing on your prayers or learning how to pray. And then later on, as you pray, like the better your prayers will get and the more focus you will be able to attain in your prayers.
Jazakallah. And this comment comes from Sharjeel Sahib. He says that in the book Remembrance of Allah, which is available on alislam.org, it states that it states a truth which is life-changing. It says that to speed up and increase in spirituality and connection with Allah, nawafil are needed, so voluntary prayers, these are needed. And he says that it's a great book, short and full of knowledge. I'm sure our viewers, they can have access to this book if they search on alislam.org. It is called Remembrance of Allah. And this question from Sabiha Ashraf Sahiba, she asked that if someone realizes the importance of prayer, but still doesn't pray thinking it's a waste of time, then what should they do?
Then I would say that they haven't really understood the importance of prayer, or even if they have, you know, we have to understand that every single thing in our life, we have to work towards, we have to struggle, right? So even with prayer, you know, we have to struggle, right? We have to take that step and do it. If we're not going to do it, then that's on us, because we have been given those faculties to work towards that step. So, you know, I would say just try, right? Take a small step, a very small step, but try.
And this comment comes from N.A. Chaudhry Saiba. She writes that along with the 5 prayers, I pray at every chance and breath. She says, Alhamdulillah, Inshallah, and Astaghfirullah. These are regular, as well as durood as I fall asleep. So going back to what we talked about earlier, that we have to make every part of our day as a part of worship. A question is from M. Buller Sahib on Twitter. He asks that, what are some other ways of getting your prayers accepted? So we mentioned a few, but he's asking if there's any other things that he can do to have his prayers accepted by God.
So, you know, the Prophet Messiah, he actually addressed this, and he said one way of having your prayers accepted is that when you notice that for whatever reason you are praying and you are praying fervently, and you notice that your prayers are not being accepted, what should you do? He said that the one possible solution to this is to approach someone who is more pious than you, someone who is more righteous than you, and along with your prayers, ask them to pray for you as well. Now, in today's day and age, we have this amazing blessing of Khilafat. We have Hazur Anwar Ayyadahullah Ta'ala bin Aziz, who is sitting and waiting for us to write to him. Hazur Anwar wants to pray for us. Hazur Anwar wants to make a connection with us. So we know that we have this amazing blessing, and this is something that we should utilize, that if our prayers are not being accepted, we have to make sure that we're constantly writing to Hazur Anwar as well. We are praying for ourselves, we are requesting Hazur Anwar for prayers, and we are also praying for Hazur Anwar as well. And by doing this is an amazing formula for the acceptance of prayers.
And a few more comments that we have time to take. Sobia Mahmood Sahiba, she says that while meditation may bring us mental and emotional peace, it is nowhere near prayer, which brings us both the mental, emotional, and most importantly, the spiritual peace and goodness. And Harim Ahmed Saib, he says that prayer and meditation are both very important. Salat is a form of meditation. It helps us clear our mind, reduces our stress, and gets us closer to God. It helps us to be calm, and it has many other benefits. All the benefits of meditation can also be achieved in Salat. And Mazharul Haq Khan Sahib shares a verse of the Holy Quran. This is chapter number 29, verse 46, where Allah says, "Verily, prayer prevents the worshipper from indulging in anything that is undignified or indecent." And we'll take our final comment from Rifat Adnan Sahiba. She actually shares a quote of the promised Messiah alayhi salam about the power of prayer. This quote is from Lecture Sialkot, page 33. The promised Messiah ﷺ, he states that prayer is the elixir which turns a handful of dust into pure gold. It is water which washes away inner impurities. With such prayer, the spirit melts and flows like water to fall prostrate on the threshold of the Holy One. Jazakallah to everyone for sending us your comments and your questions. Please do send us in our follow-up, our next program, inshallah. We will try our best to take as many of these comments and questions as possible. Now we know that each and every one of us, we require some sort of meditation to put us at ease, as we've heard today. The Islamic prayer is the most complete, the most fulfilling form of meditation that we can practice. The real reason it is most impactful is because it not only fulfills our longing for a connection with our Creator, but it also because it gives us the peace of mind. It gives us the satisfaction of our heart. And this is what God the Almighty in the Holy Quran, He states when He says, "Allah bizikrillahi tatma'innul qulub," that it is only in the remembrance of Allah that hearts find satisfaction. Jazakallah Asif Sahib, Jazakallah Shahrukh Sahib. A very interesting discussion that we had today. Thank you for joining in and joining our conversation. Please do send us your feedback, send us your comments at our Twitter handle, which is @beacon_MTA. You can also email us at beacon@mta.tv. Please do join us again, same time next week at 1900 GMT on Beacon of Truth. Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all.
इस्लाम कुछ भी हो जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें